The makers of Ori are at it again. This time, there's no whimsical land of magic and wonder, just a world of turmoil, misery and death. Oh, so much death. This is no rest for the wicked from Moon Studios, and it has set itself a simple goal, to be the next evolutionary step for the ARPG genre. Does it live up to that, or has it bitten off more than it can chew? The game is an ARPG. Now, these days that can mean a lot of different things. Is it a Soulslike? Does it lean into Diablo roots? Or is it something different altogether? The answer is all of the above. The combat and general design uses From Software's formula. Fights are methodical, attacks deliberate, and mistakes are punished. The world is opened up little by little via shortcuts, and you are expected to die. Quite a lot. But then there's random loot, enemies drop gear, a chest might contain a few coins or your ideal weapon. There's different modifiers that can be attached to equipment and an incentive to go back and loot everything again and again to find your perfect gear. So more of a Diablo-like feel there. But then there's a whole bunch of stuff that doesn't fit into either category. There's a big focus on gathering and crafting. Upgrading your gear and returning to old areas is an important part of the gameplay loop. There's even player housing. It's an amalgam of familiar influences with a lot of twists to throw you off its course. Now you can look at that two ways. Retrospectively, I see that as bold and interesting and individual, but that took me a while to understand. The first few hours, it felt quite murky, like the game was trying to wear too many hats. There was a definite turning point, however, but I'll get onto that shortly. While the gameplay loop may be ambiguous at first, one thing realized immediately with the visuals and game world, and I just want to shine a light on that because they are incredible. The devs already have a solid track record of creating stunning worlds with Ori, but this really kicks it up a notch. It is engrossing. This is very much a grimdark world of various horrors and general unpleasantness, and the devs have struck a balance in making it so pretty that you're thinking, boy, I want to live there, before doubling back on that and reminding yourself, no, I most certainly do not want that. The levels are intricate and secrets are squirreled away in every little recess of the world. You've got a town hub which is sprawling and multi-tiered, and it's populated by a cast of intriguing yet marginally depressed characters. There's a lot of personality in everyone you meet, and the voice acting is really high caliber.
Show these mainlanders that Sakra is our island!
It's not just the starring roles either. Random nobodies you pass will throw voice lines your way, and some of them are pretty damn funny.
You look a bit thick to me.
They all come to life in the cutscenes, which are, again, really well made, absorbing, and as much as I hate using this word, they are epic. Right from the get-go, I was engaged in the world. It was heavy-hitting and the looming threats felt real.
You question the church?
You're not the church, Madrigal. You're just the tip of its spear.
Enough.
So, world building, visuals, personality, the game has all of that in spades. But it's not an ARPG without an exorbitant amount of combat and violence, and that comes hot and heavy in the game. To reiterate my earlier point, the combat feels very grounded in Dark Souls DNA. Every attack is deliberate. You have a stamina bar which dictates the flow of battle. Parrying and dodging are the keys to success, and every mistake will be heavily punished. The bosses are huge, threatening, and will require you to learn their movesets or die a most undignified end. You've got runes attached to your weapons which unlock special moves, and movesets are diverse and interesting. You can specialize your characters in all sorts of ways, and different weapons gain bonuses from different stats. I went for a faith-focused build, and not for any real reason other than because my character looked a bit like Ned Flanders. Yeah, that's how I make decisions in games. That's my process. Combat feel is really important in this sort of game, and I can comfortably say that every single hit has a lot of weight to it. As I like to say, it feels chunky. There's power and oomph behind every swing. It's also incredibly unforgiving. As you'll see with this little montage I put together, I died a lot. And I won't lie, nearly all of those were my fault. However, there was a good amount of frustration caused by fights going downhill because of something dumb. Getting stuck on the scenery, or boxed in and unable to roll away, or getting trapped and stun locked. In some cases you might hit the wrong key because the controls aren't intuitive and you can't yet change them. In others you might miss enemies entirely because of inconsistent enemy targeting. On one hand, yes, skill issues, I hear it, get good. But I've played my fair share of Souls-like games, and I am the first to heap scorn on myself and call myself a stupid person. But I was getting increasingly frustrated, and some of that was down to the game's deliberate and built-in mechanics. See, your healing items don't respawn when you rest. You also can't rest. It doesn't work like that. You have to go out into the world, get materials and craft food. On one hand, I kinda love this. I find the idea of chowing down on a bowl of crab chowder mid-fight just hilarious. However, this does halt the momentum of the game as you need to stop progressing to go back to the forest and pick herbs and mushrooms. Now this alone wouldn't bother me if there wasn't another mechanic in play that also punishes you for dying repeatedly: durability. As you die, your equipment gets damaged, and you have to go back to town to repair it, and this costs money. The more you die, the heftier the repair bill is going to be, and you're not making any money because you keep dying. This can lead to a death spiral. This isn't getting soft locked out at the game levels, and you can get out of this spiral pretty easily, but it's just frustrating game design, and I don't think it adds anything. It halts the momentum and makes it feel like you can't go in and try stuff, because that's just going to burn through your food and money supply. Now, I am playing it quite cool here and making it sound like this was just a minor annoyance. The reality is, I got so frustrated playing this. On one such death, I just quit. I went and had a nap. I wasn't tired, I was just so miserable that I needed to be unconscious. I haven't felt like that since I played Bloodborne for the first time. You're right in thinking that this is not looking good for the game. If I stopped playing then and there, this video would have just been an old man yelling at the clouds type scenario. But I decided I wanted to be the bigger person in this love-hate relationship, so I gave it another go. And I had a pretty big realization. So my plan when I first started, I wanted to reach a certain point. I wanted to show as much of the game as I could. I noticed the Souls-like feel to the combat in the opening section, and so I rushed through and played it as though it were a Souls game. And that was an issue because this isn't a Souls-like. I went through an area, saw the bare minimum, and moved on to the next place. And upon reaching the next zone, I'd get bodied. Turns out I was far from ready to jump into the next section. My armor was terrible, my weapons sucked, I had no functionality in town. All of those problems are solvable. I just had to treat the game like its own thing and not follow the playbook of other titles. Enemies in areas you've cleared respawn, but so too does the loot. You're encouraged to go back and clear areas to get new weapons with stronger modifiers and find an equipment set that suits you. You'll also find crafting parts essential for upgrading your gear and raw materials needed for upgrading the town. You'll pick plants, find fishing spots, and murder rats for their meat, all to keep a steady supply of food flowing. The game offers you bounties and challenges, encouraging you to go back to areas you thought were finished. When I stopped trying to rush, I saw the game for what it is, and I liked it. The game clicked, and I realized that it wasn't like Souls, or Diablo, or any other RPG I've played for that matter. It was its own thing. I was making my own objectives and slowly getting stronger. Grind is built in, and in most cases I would tick that off as a negative, but it works here. Firstly, the world is just so enjoyable to explore, and you've got reason to backtrack as loot keeps respawning. Your returns are always different. I found myself thinking that this will get stale before long. I thought, wouldn't it be cool if the enemies changed and this all became more difficult? Well, turns out that definitely happens. When you reach milestones in the story, areas change, new foes appear, loot gets upgraded, and there's yet more reasons for you to return to old areas. When I started playing, I set myself a goal: get a house. I knew housing was a feature, and I love that sort of thing in games. But much like my life as a millennial, I did everything to get on that property ladder and ended up getting beaten down, disheartened, and writhing in squalor. My first few hours in the game, I cannot say I enjoyed them. But there was a clear turning point. I gave it another chance, and the second time around had the sticking factor, and I began to really enjoy this game for what it was, rather than what I expected it to be. Now, you might expect me to say, give it a chance, or recommend it as long as you have some patience. But no. See, taking 6 hours to have a game stick is too long. There are going to be people who it clicks with straight away, and that's great, but everyone's different. Those first couple of hours really leave an impression on a player. The game needs to present what it is in the first hour or two. I wouldn't say it starts slow, but it isn't clear what's important. It feels like an isometric Dark Souls, but it just isn't that. There's obviously a lot of work that's gone into the world, the story, the core gameplay loop. I think the biggest gains right now are working on that player onboarding experience. Have that switch click after 30 minutes, not 6 hours. And that is something I think is entirely fixable. The game presents itself as a bold evolution of the ARP genre, and honestly I can see that ring true. There's a lot of really good game design here. It's just masked and muddied by some more questionable choices. But this is early access, and I have to give credit to the dev, they are on their toes. A lot of what I've said has been addressed in some form. I had a bunch of other points that I just had to delete because they've already been fixed. They're making big changes, reducing durability damage, tweaking stamina usage, rebalancing loot pools. And this is days after launch. They are listening to their players and implementing fixes, which is exactly what I love to see. And they're being transparent. Performance and optimization is a problem. They know this. They will fix it. Onboarding is a strain for players. They know this. They'll take things back to the drawing board. They seem to really have their finger on the pulse. In its current state, is this game going to evolve the ARP genre? My answer is no. But it has the potential to, and from the good stuff already there and the commitment to improve the game, I believe that the creators genuinely do stand by that mission statement. They really do want this to be an incredible game rather than just good enough, and I respect that. But I am getting off topic here. You're not here for some hypothetical future state of the game, you just want to know what it's like right now. So here is my verdict. First, the good. The visuals, amazing. The characters are interesting, the cinematics powerful, and the world is dripping with grimdark nastiness. Combat is exciting and has a real sense of power. Hitting an enemy with a mallet provides great visual and audio feedback. Exploration is worthwhile, the game loop is out of the ordinary and compelling, and while this may be a negative for some, I love crafting systems almost as much as I love player housing, and this has both. However, balancing all that out are some pretty unavoidable negatives. Some I've talked about already, like some of the systems being a bit out of whack, but there's some other things you may have noticed from the footage. The UI is hard to navigate as a PC user. The main town of Sacrament is beautiful, but it's also huge, and navigating around it just takes too long. I'm also not a fan of timed systems on building upgrades and bounties. I don't think that has any place in a single player game personally. Though saying that, the game is intended to have co-op and PvP in the future, though I can't really talk too much on that as I don't know how it'll work. If you are particularly interested in that side of the game though, let me know in the comments and I can revisit it at a later date. My big resounding issue with the game is just how long it took to kick in and make sense. By the end, yes, I was all in and I will go back and continue playing and enjoying myself. But really, if that realization comes in the first hour or two instead, then this will be a smash hit. Now again, the game has a long way ahead of it. There's a lot of systems to dive into, but only the first chapter of the game is there. So even if you go in and have a blast, you will inevitably hit a wall. I think this game is best experienced as a full and finished product. That gives time to work out the kinks, and when you're fully drawn in, you'll have a whole game to explore, rather than hitting a roadblock and waiting. Now that's merely a suggestion. If you can live with the issues I've mentioned, or want to get involved in the early access period and contribute feedback to the devs, they certainly are listening. But if you're gonna give this one chance and one chance alone, just wait a bit and keep an eye on it. There's something pretty special cooking here, but it isn't ready yet. Despite my immense frustration during the first few hours, I did get on board with this. The pitfall was thinking it was something that it wasn't. They want to build a unique ARPG and they're certainly on track for that. The influences are all there. I felt the DNA of Diablo and Dark Souls, but also plenty more. Strangely, the game reminded me of one of my all-time favorites, Fable, in that the world and its characters have so much personality. There's a sense of permanence and you leave your impact on the world. You're making your own objectives and growing as you play. All in all, it was a very fun and captivating experience. Eventually. I was pretty torn, as I'm sure you figured out, and if you've played it already, please do let me know in the comments if you see where I'm coming from. Or just tell me to get good. I was already prepared for that the second I started to complain about dying too much. God, I wish I wasn't so bad at games. Hey, at least I managed to get a house in the end though. Mission accomplished, right?